Hello and welcome to episode 1313 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, June 24th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon by Justin Mason. Justin, good afternoon, sir. How's it going?
It's going all right. It's a beautiful day here in Northern California, and getting ready to go camping this weekend. So,
Excellent.
enjoy that. So we may. Well, actually, no. I'll actually be around on Friday.
Kind
So,
of an annual trip, right?
this one. Well,
Ish.
no, that one is one I take in July during the All-Star break. This one
Okay,
is
that's right.
just kind of a random kind of group of friends going and stuff with
Okay.
their families. So it's a lot of fun, but my definition of camping and my wife's definition of camping are very, very different.
Is yours a
So
more high-tech version or a more rugged version?
mine is a more rugged version. I was in the
Okay,
military. My dad was in the military.
that makes sense. Yep,
And so and my wife is like, let's move outside for a weekend. Um,
exactly. Have all the things, the TVs hooked up and all that.
yeah, like I remember the first time she looked at me and she goes, "Okay, I made dinner, so you get to do the dishes." I was like, "The what? We're we're camping." Like just throw the
Do
paper
the
plates
dishes.
into the
No,
fire. Like,
gotta do the
no,
dishes.
so I mean, let's be honest, her way is a lot more comfortable. Like we have an
Sure.
air mattress and shit like that. So like in as I get older, I see the benefits of hers.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I'm much more of a like, okay, like you bring some hot dogs and a couple cans of beans and a sleeping bag, and if you catch more food, you catch more food.
Remind me to only go camping with Danielle and
Yeah.
not you. I will definitely prefer her idea of camping. We're gonna talk about some June gems. We're not quite at the end of the month, but we're about a week away. We got some players that are playing really well, and they run kind of the entire gamut of roster rates. So some of these guys aren't available. I just want to talk about them, kind of see where you're at. Maybe they're trade targets, or maybe they're guys that are just on hot streaks right now, including one of my favorite players, all the way down to some guys that are widely available and probably need to be picked up more. And maybe even one guy that we're going to talk about who had a huge weekend, whose roster rate is probably not updated because I have to imagine he was a huge pickup even in shower formats over the weekend. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But I know that you guys did an episode yesterday. You and Eric Smolsky chatted, and there was some news about the Aurelvis Martinez situation with him getting suspended. And of course, they've always got their excuse, and most of the time it's BS, but sometimes there is some extra context that could at least open up the window for them being truthful and having possibly made a mistake. You had a little confusion there with Aurelvis Martinez that you wanted to clear up.
Yeah, so I made comments about I didn't think that the medication was something that he would have gotten prescribed to him. But somebody in our Discord who goes under the name Wolf, so shout out to him, uh, kind of corrected me and said his wife works in fertility and sometimes they do prescribe medication that Orvelis Martinez popped positive for. Uh,
Clomifene,
yeah,
something
or
like that.
Clomid, which is
Clomid.
the brand name or the I
Okay.
believe so. So my bad. Like I said on the podcast, I am not a doctor.
Yeah.
As much as sometimes I would like to play one on TV, but thank you for correcting me. I really do appreciate that. If we ever make a mistake, yeah, don't feel bad
Yeah. I don't
about
like
coming
getting
out and
crap
letting us.
wrong.
Yeah,
So
I
I don't
yeah
mind being corrected.
because I'll come back and we've got lots of listeners and I don't want them to be misinformed either. So
Yeah, because then they're
now
taking that knowledge. In
yeah.
something like this is small, but if we ever end up with something bigger that we are passing out, and then people are saying, "Well, I heard it from them," and it's their job to know about baseball
Yep.
stuff, so I'm going to start saying it. And we don't want to look like a-holes out there or make others look like that. So I'm glad you followed up with that on Elvis Martinez. Now I haven't listened to it yet because I haven't taken the dogs for a walk. Do you like maybe going for Elvis Martinez in dynasties on the cheap right now? I know sometimes when this news hits, there can be some a buying opportunity sometimes, like I know Elve Marte when he got suspended. Is there any of that with Elvis Martinez?
I think so. I mean, there has been talk that the Blue Jays could trade Bo Bichette here at the deadline or maybe even
I
in the
think they should.
offseason because they're probably not going to extend him long term. And so Martinez would likely be the starting shortstop in that scenario next year. Now, do I think he plays shortstop long term? No, I don't. But I do
I don't
think this
either.
is a decent buying opportunity on him if you're in kind of a rebuild mode, because I don't know that his value is going to be any lower. We've seen plenty of players over the course of, the last, decade or so, positive for something in the minor leagues, and then be fine in the majors later on and
Yeah.
never have a problem again. Jorge Polanco being, the prime example of that, right? Where he popped positive
Didn't Starling
for
Marte get
Hades.
popped? Am I besmirching his name? I certainly don't want to cast aspersions, but I'm fairly certain.
He popped in the majors.
Oh, okay, that's right. You're saying minor specifically. I'm just saying in general, it doesn't really bother me that much. That like I don't now have a brand new outlook on Aroldis Martinez that is soured. If I liked him before this, I would be interested. The only thing is obviously his timeline is delayed with the 80-game suspension, but other than that, I'd be on Aroldis Martinez and see if I can get a discount. All right, so I'm glad you cleared that up there. Let's talk some of these June gems here. We got some guys that are playing very well throughout the month of June with 1 week left, and they can pretty much have a rotten week this week, and it still wouldn't spoil their entire month. Let's start with my boy Royce Lewis returning. God, I love this guy, and he just shows why even in these tiny samples here. We talked about how, excuse me, his opening day was the perfect microcosm of his career. 2 for 2 with a homer and an injury that cost him 2 months. He was gone until June 4th. Then, since returning, so he wasn't even there on June 1st. He missed the first couple games, and there's still a week left in the month. He's got 9 homers, 13 ribbies, 16 runs, does Royce Lewis. And that's in 73 plate appearances. The full season paces of those, just to laugh because they're ridiculous. 86 homers, 124 ribbies, and 152 runs if he were to keep that up. Just out of his gourd, 9 homers in 17 games, showing you like, this is why you held me. This is why I'm a god. This is why all the people that you guys laughed at for drafting me, drafted me because I'm this fucking good. Sorry to get F-bomby here, but I love Royce Lewis. He's so good. Can he please stay healthy? There's no real fantasy question because he's rostered. I mean, it is only 91% at Fantasy Pros.
That's insane to me. That part
truly
is
nuts. But I doubt any of our listeners play in leagues where he's not rostered. But if you do, always check. But Royce Lewis is a god. I guess more in the grand scheme than if we want to spin it fantasy. What about a buying opportunity on him? Do you think somebody would be trying to sell high, thinking, okay, his stock is back up, now I should get out? Would you buy a Royce Lewis right now, even at the peak of a crazy run with 9 homers in 17 games?
I mean, I think I would, but I'm always going to worry about the injuries, right? This is very much like this is the hitter version of Tyler Glass now. I'm always like, I know what the talent says, and if you could wrap him in bubble wrap and make sure, or go to the settings on MLB The Show and turn off injuries, like this is a top, like a first round talent. I think we're seeing a first round talent being born here in Royce Lewis, but the injuries are always going to be scary. And so I'm much more likely to buy high in a shallower format where I can replace replace him a lot easier if he does go back down. But like, yeah, if someone wants some, and I know there are people who want some, I got questions today in my chat on like, what should I trade Royce Lewis for? And I pretty much said I just wouldn't trade him. Like I would just roll with the risk. And like I've got him in a few leagues. I'm gonna continue to just now they're NFBC leagues where I can't trade anyways, but even if I had him, I've got him in a couple dynasty leagues too. I'm just praying and hoping that he stays healthy and turns into the first round player that we all thought was possible for him.
Yeah, because the talent is absolutely there with Royce Lewis. He's showing it again, albeit in a small sample, but he's always showing the glimpses. And I like that you went to an example like Tyler Glass now instead of kind of maybe the more obvious one of teammate Byron Buxton, because he's better than Buxton, right? Buxton showed glimpses too, but I don't even know if they were ever this bright. I guess that 28 homer 2022 season was pretty darn bright, but even that was only 92 games and came with 51 ribbies because even in that, he couldn't quite stay healthy. I guess we do need more of a full season from Lewis before I can say that his bright spots are brighter than Byron Buxton, but man, the talent is off the charts. I'm going to keep drafting him. I cannot wait to see what he can do with the rest of the summer. Please stay healthy.
I mean, one of the reasons I didn't go to a guy like Buxton is I honestly think he is a better talent even at Buxton's prime. Like,
which is crazy, but I agree on Lewis.
Yeah, like I just think that Lewis has Like, and obviously it's super small sample, so like this could seem really, really stupid a month from now. But like he has just been so elite every time he's stepped onto the field that like I just don't have any doubts about the talent. I only have doubts about the health.
88 games of a 170 OPS plus so far in Royce Lewis's career. It's just unbelievable. Please stay healthy. Do not be another Buxton or an Eric Davis or Troy Tulowitzki, I guess, to make it more positional relevant there. Just please stay healthy. You're so awesome. I want to talk about another guy whose roster rate is actually higher at 94%. That kind of surprised me. I kind of missed him. He's one of these guys I got a little bit of a blind spot for because I don't really roster this player type, but I do want to give some love to the American League's Luis Arraez, Stephen Kwan, hitting an MLB best 390 right now. But more importantly, Justin, 7 bombs on the year. So you're not getting zeroed out in the power, which is usually a big negative against somebody like sorry, that was actually inadvertent there. Against somebody like Stephen Kwan, not Luis Arraez. You know, when they were in the same division, it was great watching those two battle because they're two of the best, you know, just bat to ball guys in all of baseball. But when you're looking at almost a 21, actually over 162 games, it'd be more than 21 homers. I was just doing 50 times 3 there for an easy 150 games. Low 20s homer output for Stephen Kwan. Does that turn him into a different dynamic, or is it just a little bit of a power surge that might not sustain? Where are you at on Stephen Kwan with his excellent start to the year?
Yeah, I don't think this power surge is gonna stick around. So like he's slugging 575 right now. His X slug is 444.
That's crazy.
Like this power is not going to stick around. But the batting average will. I mean, he's just an elite hitter, and he plays every day. And I mean, obviously, a lot of things can change, and like all it would take is just like a minor cold streak, and he's got no shot. But like, he has a chance to hit 400.
It just shows how hard it is, though, because Kwan's been so amazing, and he's only at 390. But you're right. This is one of the guys that can do it. There's a handful in the league. He and Arraez are the top 2 on your list, probably. But he's been excellent. And hey, he's doubled his barrel rate this year to 2.2%. But he's doubled it. He's doubled it. Excuse me. He has doubled it to 2.2%. But he's doubled it. And that's pretty impressive for Stephen Kwan. You know hard hit rates up. Go ahead.
The amazing thing is he's got a 97.5 zone contact percentage.
It's just nuts. It's just nuts. If you throw it in the zone, he's going to hit it. 31% line drive rate. He's like 30-30-30 on his line drive ground ball fly ball. Just mixing it up beautifully. It is a 12% homer to fly ball, which is pretty normal for the league, but it's 4x what we usually see out of Stephen Kwan, and probably why he already has 7 homers. Here's the thing. You take the power that you've already banked. If you only get 2-3 more homers the rest of the year, you're not worried about it. You're paying for the average. Just be mindful of your runs, ribbies, and power. And home runs, because if you're falling behind with a guy like that, especially if you have one other guy similar to Kwan, you can't really roster 2, but you can live with 1. If you've got some good cushion of other power elsewhere, he can be a really great piece. But I think he's a very specific puzzle piece. He's not one of these, universal pieces that fits into every team. But Kwan's been amazing, and I just want to give him a little hat tip because I didn't realize he was hitting 390. I don't know if you did, if you've got him on any teams, but I don't.
I literally, I do have him on a number of teams because he was like my balance for Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah, and he was a very fair price this year, Stephen Kwan was. Yeah. I got to point that out too.
But I just wrote about him last night for a Fantasy Pros article because I was like, I don't really, I was trying to figure like things you can kind of look to watch this week, and I was struggling a little bit with coming up with topics, and I was like, you know what? Stephen Kwan has just been unreal good, and
put him on 400 watch.
Yeah, let's just put him on 400 watch because this is a really interesting week for the Guardians because they've got the Orioles and the Royals, so it's
both their parks too, and those are good parks for batting average, right? The walls and the alleys there can be great for a guy like Kwan, so he could really take advantage. And for the team, it's a huge prove-it week on the road at Baltimore and KC, so that is a good call-out to watch Cleveland in general.
Yeah, they could be, these could be playoff matchups, which, if I had told you Cleveland versus Baltimore and Cleveland versus Kansas City could be playoff previews, you might have thought I was crazy at the beginning of the season.
I might have, but if I can just backpad a little, I had some love for Cleveland, and I made it known.
I didn't.
And I said every team in that division has a legitimate case at the throne. Don't sleep on Cleveland. Everyone wanted to boost the Tigers and the Royals, including us. I was boosting my Tigers. You were boosting the Royals. But I said, people are sleeping on Cleveland. And so far, that has proven true. But, Baltimore we knew, and KC, again, was an upstart that a lot of folks liked, yourself included. So going to be eager to see how those two teams square off. Those three teams, I guess, Cleveland with those other two. Let's talk the guy of the weekend. The stud of the weekend. And boy, isn't it nice when you've got the big weekend guy in your lineup. It's nice when you have them, but when they're on the reserve, we've talked about this phenomenon a couple times this year. You're like, dang, at least they're on my team, but I wish I had him in. I had Alec Burleson in this week. He was ready to go, baby, and he went crazy. 2 homers and 3 steals this weekend, along with 7 hits and 7 runs. Just a monstrous weekend against your Giants. How much do you hate Alec Burleson after watching what he did against your boys this weekend?
I mean, I don't blame Alec Burleson. I blame my pitchers. Like,
Fair.
Stop going into the zone against this guy. Like, when are pitchers going to realize he's actually a pretty good in-zone hitter? I feel like they're just looking at old scouting reports and not really paying attention to kind of what he's been doing this season. And it is super frustrating from a Giants perspective, right? To see my team do exactly what other teams have been doing against him, which is we're going to try to blow him away in the zone. And it doesn't work.
How's that going?
Yeah. And so I do think that teams will catch up on Burleson at some point. And that he'll go back to not being bad or anything like that, but just not being this good.
Because he has 12 bombs and 5 steals on the year. The 5 steals, what the hell? I love it, but what the hell?
It's so weird. I can't wait for some people who are smarter than me, which are a lot of those, but specifically people who understand stolen bases and how they translate. Because a guy like Burleson, he's got? You said 5 stolen bases on how many attempts is he?
5 for 5.
He's 5 for 5.
Yeah,
but Steven Kwan is 3 for 7. And someone asked me in my chat today, hey, can you correlate why some guys are really, really good that shouldn't be good at stealing bases, and there are some guys who are seemingly struggling with it, even though they should be much better at it and have been much better in the past. And I said, I don't really know the answer, but I'll look into it. But
I think just at the 30,000 foot level, it is because we still, despite evidence to the contrary and discussion on, this show, people's articles, other people's podcasts, we're not the only ones, I'm not pretending that. But despite hearing it a bunch, we still associate stolen bases almost exclusively with speed.
Yeah.
No matter how often we talk about it, it's not all about sprint speed. In fact, sprint speed isn't even a great indicator of potential steals. It's your home the first time. Yeah. And how many, shifty, smart base runners, aka white dudes, right? Slow white dudes. We're always talking about how smart and savvy they are on the bases. There's obviously guys of other ethnicities too, but it always is Paul Goldschmidt, he's such a shifty runner because he's a really good base stealer despite not being fast. Chase Utley made his whole career off of it. Carlos Beltran used to be a burner and evolved into a slower guy, but was still always so smart on the bases that he was always super efficient. So managers and the player smarts and the speed are all components, and they're all important. Burleson does not have the speed, so he's clearly got the smarts, the good decisions. Maybe he's running off of the right catchers. Kwan might be running off of more difficult catchers too because he's a better base runner, right? And he might be more confident in his skills, but he's maybe getting burned. And especially in small samples like that, right? Between the two, Burleson and Kwan, you have 12 total SB opportunities. That's just not very many. So I think the general thing is to hammer home that it is player smarts that decide so much of it.
And two, it may be a team construct thing too, where the Cardinals are letting Burleson run because the Cardinals suck and they don't care about running in and outs. Whereas
wait. They're 2 games over 500 and in the mix again.
I know they are, but but I'm just saying previously they were kind of struggling, and maybe they were just like, okay, you can go if you see an opportunity. Whereas like the Guardians are really good and have a really deep lineup, and they may just go, we don't want you running into outs in the way that like you might. And all it takes is like a few caught stealings in a row, and maybe they put the brakes on a guy like Quan. So like
just to further your point there on Cleveland, they've been actually pretty frivolous with their running.
yeah.
They've been caught a good bit this year. I'm looking at it right now. They actually have the 5th most caughts in the league. And among those 5 teams, they have the 2nd fewest steals. Only the Angels are worse. They have 66 steals, 29 caught. It's 67-25 for Cleveland. But you look at the other 3 teams that are up in the high caught stealings. It's Washington and Cincinnati with over 100 steals, and then Tampa Bay with 77. So even they have 10 more steals than Cleveland. So they're actually running a bit frivolously. Meanwhile, St. Louis, they're 22nd in caughts with just 12 and 45 steals. So they're being more efficient. So the team might just be clued in on something and telling the guys the right times to run. Whereas Quan maybe isn't picking his spots, and a lot of the Guardians aren't picking their best spots.
And to my point, like if you look at like the game logs on those stolen bases for Quan, he went 3 for 4 in like a 4-day stretch. At the end of April, and
So
since then not running. Well, no, he got caught a bunch of times in a row. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
You went 1 for 4.
1 for 4. Sorry, you said 3 for 4. He was caught 3 out of 4 times, and then they put the brakes on him. He has 1 attempt since. That's a great call out.
So that may have to do a lot more with the team construct,
and
than
that does include the IL stint for Quan. But so it's not as many games, but since that time, since May 1st, that is going to be 21 games, and Quan is simply 0 for 1. They're not letting him run anymore. So he's been great with the average and even the little power spike, but you're not really getting much speed. So we like Burleson. Burleson's only 32% rostered. He's the guy I was referencing that his roster rate has to be higher. I don't know when these update on Fantasy Pros, but my guess is that he jumped up a bunch yesterday across these venues, which I believe it is ESPN and Yahoo combined. So I just have to believe he's more than 32%. Where are you rostering Burleson right now? Sometimes we jump on these guys that coming off the craziest hot weeks and we just catch the shit end of the run. Do you think he can keep going, though? They got 7 games this week against Atlanta and Cincy all at home. Do you like Burleson in 12-teamers?
Do you know how many games he's got against lefties?
1 in each series, Sale and Lodolo. Is he sitting, though? I feel like he's playing every day, Burleson.
I don't know if he's sitting, but he's not good against him.
Well, that's true. That's true. Do you want the ancillary, one-off run or RBI here in exchange for the crappy results, or would you rather he just not play? But the bottom line is he should play at least 5 of 7.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he plays against lefties. So now the lefties been against righties, so maybe that changes the upcoming series. But my guess is that he is going to go kind of back into, or he's going to stick in kind of this strong side platoon role, which is kind of fine because, they've got Dylan Carlson who can kind of come off the bench and, play against lefties for him. So, and you don't really want the bad numbers. So I think a 10-team league probably is too shallow for a strong side platoon guy like him.
I got to push back a little. Since May 14th, Burleson's only missed 1 game, and it was against a lefty, but that's it. And they played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lefties in that time. And he's only sat the 1 time for Burleson. So I don't know. And your point is well taken about like he sucks against them. So do you even want it? But again, you do get those pickup runs and ribbies just by being in the lineup. And maybe he gets to face a righty reliever or something. He does have 3 homers, 2 steals against lefties.
Yeah, 3 homers is enough. 68 plate appearances, 71 plate appearances. So
I think I'm there in 12s and 5 outfielder 10-teamers. I think Burleson is at least in the mix. He's batting second every day for a decent ball club.
That seems to be getting better.
Yeah, exactly. They're playing up. Like you had mentioned that they sucked earlier, but now they played themselves into the mix again. I kind of like it. I also like this other guy. He's been around since the beginning of the year, though. He broke camp, Jackson Merrill. We haven't checked in on him since all the fervor about him breaking camp. And he's been putting up a heck of a season. You look up right now, it's a 289 average with 10 homers and 9 steals, having a wonderful June. How, then, is he only still 63% rostered? Is it just because I underrate, the 3 outfielder leagues out there that it is a really, really tight fit, especially if you only have one util or no util? Or should Jackson Merrill be higher than 63%, given his full season and the excellent June, which includes 7 of those 10 homers and 2 of those 9 steals?
Yeah, I think part of it is like he's one of those guys that is, I mean, definition of an accumulator, right? Like he doesn't have like a carrying tool in terms of power hit for fantasy.
Sure.
And so he really needs to accumulate. So before this hot streak and he got those 7 home runs, like all of a sudden it looked like, oh, this is the guy who's hitting like 3 home runs and, has got a handful of stolen bases. Like, yeah, he can produce a decent average, but like the batting average wasn't like, it's not Quantian.
280, 9, and 20 was the pace coming into June for Jackson Merrill. So hitting a decent 280, but with 9 homer pace and 20 steal. I get what you're saying. It's kind of like blase. Let me update you. Now after June, 21, 19 with a 289. So he's almost 20-20 with a 290 average all of a sudden. But where does he go from here? Does Merrill keep this up and work toward the 2020 pace? Or does he dip back down to where it's like 14 homers, 20 steals? Like, where are you at the rest of the way with Merrill after you've seen the June surge?
I'm definitely intrigued. I mean, the one thing I love in a young guy is a hit tool because, like, power can develop, but a hit tool doesn't usually develop, right? Like,
Correct.
you either are good at hitting the baseball consistently or you're not. And so the fact that he's come in with his amazing hit tool and he's got a 90% zone contact on the year from a rookie, like that is awesome. Like I tend to want to bet on a guy like Merrill as opposed to kind of just say, oh, he's going to fade. Now, will the power's not going to be like this. I don't expect him to hit 7 home runs every month. But like, could he hit another, I don't know, 15 home runs over the course of the next 3 months? Like,
that's 5 per. That's not like impossible.
I think he could. I don't know that I'd bet on it. I think I'd probably bet on 10, but 10 gets into 2020 with a 290 batting average, and like
that's big.
That's big, especially for a guy who's multi-position eligible in the infield and the outfield. So, like,
I did mention the outfield thing when I was saying maybe Jackson Merrill's only 63% roster because of 3 outfield leagues, but he's got the middle because he came in as a shortstop, right? So that should help him. I think 63 is kind of low. I understand it when you paint it the way of coming into the month and he's only pacing for 9 homers. Okay, that's not 10-team viable. That's fringy in 12s if you need the batting average. But now looking up at how great it is, I think he at least, while he's hot, should be rostered at closer to an 80% clip for Jackson Merrill.
Yep.
All right, let's talk Jeimer Candelario, guy who got lots of love coming into the year. Remember when he signed, we were still on they've got to trade somebody because Cincinnati has too many guys. And then baseball, the way she is cruel, gave them 412 injuries to where guys like Nick Martini and other random congressmen named Stuart Fairchild were consistently starting for them. In the midst of that, Jeimer Candelario wasn't at his best either. So it's like even the guys that they had were getting hurt. The guys that they added weren't doing that well. Fast forward to June, and all of a sudden he's got 8 homers and 3 steals this month with a 1016 OPS. He was 10 and 12 team cuttable coming into the month. I was still holding Candelario in 15s. In fact, I held him in the main because I just felt like I wasn't going to get anything better off the waiver wire. And he rewarded that with a handsome June. But where are we at on Candelario now that he has surged? He's only 55% rostered. Do we believe this is a leveling back to where he needs to be and he'll be good the rest of the way? Or is this just a hot streak and he'll dump back down to like a mid 700s OPS after that? Where are you at on Jeimer Candelario for 10s and 12s?
I feel like it's that that GIF with a little girl who like looks at the camera and goes, "Why not both? Like, why can't it be both a hot streak and this is a little bit more of who he is? Like he's definitely running hot, and he's being more aggressive at the plate while running hot. And I think that I don't know if it's a matter of hey, he just swung his way out of it, or and it's now working, or if he's gone. so I'm swinging at everything. He's got like a 72% zone swing percentage, but it's matched up with an 89% zone contact percentage. So you're swinging a lot and you're making a lot of contact from a guy who's got a little bit of power. And like I totally buy that he can keep this going for a little while. Do I think it's going to stay this way the rest of the season? I don't necessarily buy that. But do I think he's going to be usable in like 12-team leagues rest of the way? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Jamer is rosterable in tens right now. If you need a spot, it's that classic. He's probably a fit for a roster, but maybe not your roster. And then in 12s, I think he does belong somewhere. And like even if you have the position filled, I'd probably put him on the bench. Let me see what they've got coming up at home because you love when he's hitting in that ballpark, even though he's done damage on the road. This week they are home for 3 against Pittsburgh and then 4 in St. Louis. Then they go to the Yankees and home to Detroit. So, mixed bag there. But Candelario's on fire. I'm rostering him in a lot of spots right now. Let's talk another guy that actually we only hit on very briefly. I think we randomly mentioned the fact that he was crazily stealing out there in Washington. This is Jesse Winker, the 30-year-old now journeyman outfielder. All of a sudden, he's a journeyman.
Yeah.
Played with Cincinnati from 17 to 21, and then a new team each of the last 3 years with Seattle, Milwaukee, and now Washington. Might have found something here. 3 stolen bases. This is perfect encapsulation of what we were talking about earlier with the way team context and decision-making changes steals. 3 for 6 in his career from 2017 to 2023. This year, 12 for 16 for Jesse Winker with 8 bombs, 264 average, and a really good slash line because he takes his walks as well. Just out of nowhere, Jesse Winker has become a fantasy demon. Look at June specifically, hitting 350 on the month. His fantasy categories aren't even that crazy. 2 homers, 2 steals. He actually did better in both categories for April and May. But 350 average has now brought his average up to go with the stolen bases and the power. Is Jesse Winker having a stud year? And if he can stay healthy, which I know is the biggest if, are we finally going to get the breakout that we longed for like 32 years in Cincinnati out of Jesse Winker?
Oh, man. Yes, no, and I don't know. I think we are going to get if he stays healthy, right? Like you said, the caveat with Jesse Winker is always if he can stay healthy. So
I think he's missed some time this year already. Even
he's missed some time this year too. So now, so if he can stay healthy, he's got 5 weeks.
Oh yeah, until he's heading out.
Yeah, until someone trades him to a team that will strictly platoon him.
In fairness, just 3 games missed. In fairness, I thought he had a quick IL stint. He does not. So Winker, you're going to hit on the point that he doesn't hit lefties either, but he's been getting that PT.
Yeah, they're giving him PT, and he's stolen half of his bases against left-handed pitching.
Bingo. So that is nerve-wracking if he does go somewhere and chops off that extra 85 plate appearances.
Especially if he goes to a place, maybe that needs outfield, and that we were just talking about doesn't really run.
Yeah.
In Cleveland, like if that is the kind of place he were to end up. Now, if you ended up in another team that lets him steal, fine. Maybe he does keep some of it up and can just mash.
Well, maybe the Guardians, I think the Guardians would give him a chance. And then if he proves to be good, then he can keep running. I think they're slowing down the guys that are failing.
It depends on where he hits in the lineup. So,
true.
If he's at the top, maybe, and he is a guy who's shown the ability to get on base at a really good clip. So he could be kind of like a number 2 hitter. Yep. Would be really, really interesting. I've never been a Jesse Winker guy because he gets hurt all the time and he's a platoon guy. But somehow he's making it work this year. And just because I have never been a fan doesn't mean I won't buy in when things are working.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially at this price, because you're probably not buying when his Cincinnati price keeps surging because we all keep wish casting a full season. I was very much a part of that. And now when he's a waiver pickup, it's a hell of a lot easier to do that. And then if things go south, you say, okay, fine. I never really liked the guy anyway, but I'll ride this out. 8 homers, 12 steals. But your point about getting traded and then maybe some of that production going, because if he goes to a more conservative ball club on the base paths, then Jesse Winker's not running as much anymore. Now you're dependent upon batting average and power. neither of which jump off the page. These 12 steals are instrumental to Winker becoming a fantasy stud this year. So ride it while you can, and we'll deal with the trade when it comes, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's talk about a guy that we've been talking about as podcasters for 712 years, and we probably got another 50, because Carlos Santana will never stop playing. And he'll never stop having surges of quality either. I firmly believe that. I love this guy. One of my favorites over his career, and always has a few runs in him. Now, he's been consistent with the power. 4 homers per month, April, May, and June. However, the massively rising batting averages have really helped here in June. From 190 in April to 235 in May to 343 this month. The BABIP is running. He's got his BABIP regression. The hits are falling. It's a standard Carlos Santana hot streak. But do we get a doubling of this? Do we basically get 12 more homers with another 247 average the rest of the way? What do you think of Carlos Santana coming off of his June surge?
I feel like we get one of these from Carlos Santana every year, and then
every year.
Yeah, and then he kind of goes back to being just Carlos Santana. But I mean, I think you just ride it while it's hot. Like, it's just, I picked him up in a league yesterday where it might have been my main, but was like where I have Nolan Arenado, and I don't know what Arenado's status is going to be.
Yep.
And I need a guy like finally corner bats off in deeper leagues as well right now. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm just rolling with Carlos Santana. Nothing's changed. Like, he's still the same guy he's always been. But to me, like, it's amazing to me that he is still in the league, because honestly, when I think of Carlos Santana, I actually think he's older than he actually is.
He's 38. He does seem like he's like 46.
Because in my head, I go like, man, like, because I started playing fantasy in 2001, and like I remember when he was called up, and he was a catcher and stuff, and like he was just god at the position, just because I played AL only, so like he was like just an absolute god.
Switch hitting catcher for Cleveland in the early 2010s.
That would DH and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so like,
and then start playing first.
And so, like, for me, like, in my head, I think, like, man, he's been around since, like, the, like, early 2000s.
No.
Like,
not quite that long.
He should be, like, in my head, he's, like, 50 and somehow continuing to play. So.
Well, he is 38, though, and still playing. And you mentioned he does this every year. And he did this last year, where he had 2 pretty crummy months, April and May, and then a huge June. Then went back in the tank for a couple months in July and August, and then had a big September. All the while staying consistent with the power. 4 and 5 homers in July and August, and then 5 in September, but a big batting average surge. So yeah, he might do the same thing again, where July and August aren't that great, but then September's great to close out the season for Santana. So I think he's a 15-team hold.
I think the
12-team streamer.
The only thing that makes it a little different is last year, I mean, before he was traded, was he was playing on Pittsburgh, who just didn't care. And
more
so
PT.
whereas Minnesota has a lot of options. So like,
true.
If he does slow down in July or in August, like, is he going to lose that PT? He could, but Minnesota's also not a team that tends to go out and get like big pieces at the deadline because they're cheap. So like, I don't think they're going to bring in someone to replace him right away unless he's like truly awful next month.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. That would be the one risk, is that if Santana goes too deep in the tank, then he starts losing PT. But dude gets on base, has some punch, quality major leaguer. It seems to be a pretty good guy in the clubhouse, because keeps getting latched on with a bunch of teams and getting traded for. So I think that would speak somewhat positively toward Carlos Santana. Let's check in with a couple guys that we talked about during the May Fab review. And I want to talk about them because it's been 2 weeks since we did that episode, believe it or not. I felt like we did that 5 seconds ago. And both have continued to put up some numbers. So I want to see if your opinions have changed at all, or if you're still where you were when we talked about David Hamilton and Elliot Ramos. Let's start with Hamilton. Playing shortstop for the Red Sox, has been a speed demon. 21 for 22 on the bases, hitting 283 with 4 homers. Just in the time since we talked about him, it's 7 more stolen bases. This was on June 13th that we discussed him, so I'm doing the 14th on. 7 more steals, which is great. but the batting average has started to trickle down a little bit with just a 227 average thanks to a 278 BABIP. So some smoothing out of the average, no power to speak of. He had 4 homers early on, 0 since, but the speed remains consistent. Is David Hamilton going to be somebody that fantasy owners can rely on for steals the rest of the way, in your opinion?
I think he can. Even during this, like, kind of slow down in batting average, like he's still making really, really good in zone contact. And I think he's got the ability to continue to keep getting on base. I think the biggest issue for Hamilton is, will the Red Sox continue to play him if he struggles defensively?
Yeah.
Because they have good defensive options that they can put in there. I think he's going to
Wouldn't
do
he just go to second base, though? Sorry to interrupt you, but wouldn't he just, because if David Hamilton's bat continues to be a plus, don't they have to find a way to play him? The
I
Red
would
Sox?
think so. And that's why I think they will. I think they'll find spots for him. I think he's just a good pure hitter, and with that speed, and we're playing in a game right now where some teams really, really value the speed on the base paths. Right, the power is down, and so teams are wanting to run, and David Hamilton can run. So I don't have any real concerns about David Hamilton. I really wish I hadn't dropped him in my main.
Yeah, that one's tough, man, because he's looking like that John Birdie type, that sort of game changer where he just gets such a cluster of steals that it's really, 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 really helpful to the folks that got him. I've lamented this a few times already, but I have a bias toward him, and I still don't have him anywhere. He's a Longhorn. I love him. I was excited when he got called up, and I just jumped off the train too early myself. So I have some regret there. But he's been great. I really do think that even if they do move off to somebody else at center at shortstop because he's not the best shortstop, that David Hamilton would still get some second base burn. He should be playing every day. He's 26. Why not see what you've got if he can be part of your next good team in Boston? And then your boy, Elliot Ramos. I say your boy because you're a Giants fan, not because you actually liked him, because you're a little bit tepid on him. And I don't bring this up to like try to dunk on you, because while he does have 4 more homers since our last check-in, bringing his season total up to 10. It has come with a 244 average because Elliot Ramos has started to smooth out a little bit, which I believe was some of your concern. But let's check back in here. We're at 10 homers, 35 steals, 35 ribbies, pardon me, 35 ribbies, 17 runs, a steal, and a 289 average with a 363 OBP. So all in all, pretty good for 41 games of Elliot Ramos. I forget exactly where your concerns were, but I felt like you had some concerns that he wasn't going to stay at the level he was at. Where are we now 2 weeks later with 4 more homers on the ledger?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's really changed in the underlying numbers. He still is like, even this month, he's like 80% zone contact. Like, he's right on the cusp of being like a guy that could lose a ton of playing time because the batting average craters. He's hitting the ball hard when he makes contact, and I think to his benefit, the Giants suck.
Yeah, what kind of leeway do you think y'all will give him, given that y'all aren't great? And again, this is another kind of like the David Hamilton thing. Like, let's find out if this guy's part of our next big team. He's 24, he's even younger, and had a lot of prospect pedigree. Elliot Ramos did. So shouldn't they just let him go even through some struggles?
They should, but they haven't done it for other guys like Luis
That's
Matos. Now the one thing that helps is, I mean, you look at their IL right now, and Bo's, Young-Hoo Lee's done for the season. Mike Yastrzemski's on the IL. And I think they're going to trade Conforto at some point. So, like, they may not have other options. So, like, he could go up there and hit 220 and still probably continue to play.
Is that your biggest concern on Ramos, is that his batting average will falter? Or do you believe... Okay.
It's batting average. Yeah.
So you believe in the power being substantial?
I don't know if I believe it being substantial, but I believe it to be above league average. So like I think he, in a full season, like Helio Ramos could be like a guy that hits 25 home runs if he gets full run. The question is, will he, like, at the rest of the way, if we're just talking about this season, like, I think there is a good opportunity for him to play the rest of the way, just because the Giants just run out of options, right?
Yeah.
Like, too many injuries. They trade some of the older guys on this team, because they're clearly not, I mean, they're in fourth place in the division. They're 11 and a half games behind the Dodgers. I know that the NL wild card is still kind of inside. I don't think this is going to be a year where they really compete for a wild card spot. So, like, I think that they commit to actually like tearing down some of this and trying to get that minor league system a little bit better. So
I think they should too with the Giants. Yeah, they got to look at that.
As long as he doesn't completely bottom out in the month of July, August 1st hits and they've traded whatever pieces of trading. Like, I think he's locked into playing time. So I don't think he's a bad guy to roster. He's not as good as people are thinking he is in this moment is my main point.
So don't extrapolate with Ellie Ramos because you could get a little too comfortable with the 10-35 homers and ribbies, not steals, like I said earlier, and start thinking, oh boy, here we go. I've got a game changer. And the 289 average, again, I want to zero in on that because that's Justin's biggest concern. Again, when we talked about him last time, I like him a little bit more, but I'm not going to completely undermine what you're saying because I agree on the batting average risk. He's got 29% K rate. And I even have some concerns on the power because he has a 30% homer to fly ball. That said, I want to ride this out. I think there's the playing time should be there. You're right. They should trade out other pieces and just clear the path for Matos and Ramos to play every day. Like if they don't play the rest of the way, I think the Giants have failed. Right? Because I agree with you. They're not real contenders. I know they're 6 under, which does put them in fringe contention. Stop with all that. Play Matos, play Ramos, see what's up, and reassess for next year.
They have a guy on this roster who I've never heard of, like who is
Trenton Brooks.
Yeah, like I don't know who. Like I watch the Giants, regularly. Like
that's a congressman.
Like if
he put together that one bill, he did that like goofy bill about sodas forcing people to drink them, which was really weird. I don't know why he thought that legislation was going to get through. You can't force people to drink soda. Trenton Brooks. And now he's trying his hand at baseball. Unbelievable. That's for those that don't know our segment of reliever.
We need to do that again.
We do need to do one. It's that time of year, right? A bunch of guys getting called up. Like you could have done Trenton Brooks, and I wouldn't have known. The only reason I guessed it was because I pulled up their roster when you said that, and I was like, okay, it has to be him. But I wouldn't have known whether or not he was a congressman or a baseball player. So definitely. But anyway, there's a group of guys that we're looking at. Some of them aren't available, just roster them if you've already got them, but others are. So go take a look, see what's up with Burleson, Jackson Merrill, Jamer Candelario, even Winker. We think that steam might run out of that, but go see what's up. I think all these guys, David Hamilton, Carlos Santana, Ellie Ramos, have some viability in your 10s and 12s right now, depending on your league setup. 5 outfielders, deeper reserves. Don't just turn a blind eye to these hot streaks because I think some of these can sustain. My favorite of this bunch in terms of being like super fantasy impact worthy among the availables, obviously it's Royce Lewis amongst everybody, but among the guys that are like 50% or let's say 55% because that's what Candelario is, 55% or lower, my favorite is Hamilton because that speed could be so game changing. Yeah, do you have a favorite of that group from the 55 and below?
It's Hamilton.
It's got to be, right?
I don't think it's particularly close. Like I said, Santana's going to kind of go back into being, pumpkin and the guy that Santana's been for the last, 5+ years. And Winker, while I think Winker is going to be decent as long as he's healthy, who knows what the situation looks like once he is traded. Whereas
team context so huge there. And then Burleson is probably next. I do like his hitting ability. I don't know if he's a 12 homer per 69 game guy, but I do like what he can do too. So he's next on that list. All right, Justin, great talking with you there. You did your chat earlier today, so we will talk again on Thursday and Wednesday. That's right. We're talking Wednesday. So we'll be back again Wednesday. And I don't know what our topic is yet. I'll come up with something, though. But have a good one. I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy.